The name of the game is Loan Shark, and it was released by Pixelated Milk in 2018. The game is set on a cruise ship where you play as a loan shark who gives out loans to passengers, which they then have to pay back with interest. However, after a while, things start to go wrong. For example, people are found dead all over the ship. And there's also a creepy guy with a hook for a hand who seems to be following you everywhere. So yeah, basically you need to find out what's going on and try to survive. To be honest, this game is UNT really like other horror games. Because there are UNT any jump scares or anything like that. Instead, it's more psychological, and it's also kind of weird because, well, the main character is actually... he's not exactly a good person. He takes advantage of people and charges them high interest rates on their loan. So yeah, I wouldn't really want him as my character, but whatever. Anyway, the game is pretty short. It only took me about 45 minutes to complete, and most of the time I was just walking around talking to people and then making decisions which affected the ending. There are a total of 30 different endings, so I guess that's kind of cool. And the graphics are pretty good too. They remind me of the old Resident Evil games. You know, the ones with the fixed camera angles? Overall, I think this game is pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's definitely worth playing if you're into psychological horror games. The story's pretty interesting, and the atmosphere is really creepy. There are some pacing issues, but other than that, it's pretty solid. Also, the soundtrack is pretty good. It's not amazing, but it does a good job of setting the mood. Now, let's get into the details. Okay, so as I said before, the main character is a loan shark who gives out loans to the rich passengers on a cruise ship. However, he's not doing this out of the goodness of his heart. He's doing it to make money, obviously. But I guess that's just how the world works. Nobody does anything without expecting something in return. So yeah, our character isn't really a good person, but he's not really a bad person. He's just kind of selfish, I guess. The game starts out pretty slow. You just meet a bunch of different characters, and then they ask for loans, which you can either grant or deny. If you say yes, they'll give you a certain amount of money, which you can then use to buy items or upgrade your stats. If you say no, well, they'll just leave and you won't get any money. But the thing is, most of these people are pretty desperate. So, even if you do say no, they'll still beg you to change your mind. And it's kind of hard to just turn them away. You feel bad for these people, right? So yeah, it's kind of up to you to decide whether you want to help them or not. But keep in mind that every decision you make will affect the ending. As you're playing the game, you'll come across a lot of strange and creepy things. For example, there's a guy with a hook for a hand everywhere you go. And then there are also a lot of dead bodies lying around. And yeah, it's pretty clear that someone is killing people on the ship. But who is it and why? Well, that's for you to find out. Just kidding. There is no real answer to that question. The game is pretty much up to interpretation, but personally, I think it's the guy with the hook for a hand. He's always lurking in the shadows and he never speaks. So yeah, he's definitely up to no good. Now, in terms of gameplay, well, this isn't really a game with a lot of action. It's more of a puzzle game, I would say. Most of the time, you're just talking to people and then trying to figure out what to do next. The game is pretty linear, so there's not really a lot of freedom, but that's kind of the point. I think the developers wanted to create a sense of dread and tension, and they definitely succeeded in doing that. The atmosphere is really creepy, especially on the lower levels of the ship. It's dark and dingy, and you can just feel the despair oozing out of the walls. As you progress through the game, you'll eventually reach the lower levels of the ship where things get really creepy. Here, you'll start to see dead bodies, and then you'll also start to hear strange noises. It is at this point that you start to feel the tension build up, and it is also when the game starts to get more interesting. As I said before, there are a total of 13 different endings to the game, and to get each ending, you have to make a certain number of correct decisions. For example, to get the true ending, you have to make 7 correct decisions. To get the secret ending, you have to make 9 correct decisions, and so on. So yeah, it's kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure book, but with a lot more replay value. Another thing I want to mention is the soundtrack. It's not amazing, but it does a good job of The music is pretty dark and atmospheric, and it really helps to create a sense of dread. Personally, I think the sound design is one of the game's greatest strengths, because it is able to convey a lot of emotion without the use of cutscenes or dialogue. For example, there's S1 scene where you're re-exploring the lower levels of the ship and you start to hear strange noises. Yudu, I know where the noise is coming from, and it is building up and you reach just tense and then scared. Yeah, that was probably the scariest part of the game for me. But overall, I think this is a pretty good game. It's not perfect, but it's definitely worth playing if you're into psychological horror games. The story is pretty interesting, and the atmosphere is really creepy. There are some pacing issues, but other than that, it's pretty solid. Oh! And I almost forgot to mention this, but there is also a demon in the game. Okay, I don't want to spoil anything, but basically you can interact with this demon in a certain way, which will then lead to one of the endings. But yeah, I'm not gonna say anything else about it. You'll just have to find out for yourself. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap up this video now. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. And then let me know what you thought of the game in the comments below. Did you find it scary? Which ending did you get? And yeah, just let me know what you thought. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.